the boy Mirage, the assassin. I'm back. What's happening? And in this tape, what we're going to do is we're going to continue the series. Me dealing with the Indigenous Illuminati out there and trying to get you all to understand this concept, this principle, and this code of having an empire state of mind. One thing about it is, as so-called black people, I can say that majority of us, we don't have a royal or a noble or a ruling class mentality. And it shows in the way we behave, and it shows in the types of things that we entertain and what we choose to be associated with. So let me give you an example. Let's take a person that has a certain amount of, economic status or wealth. These people are used to living a certain kind of way. So it's just certain things that they're not going to do and they're going to refuse to do. For example, it could be certain kind of foods that are very, very cheap, that may not be healthy. Because they have a little bit of money and they can eat things of a higher quality, they're not going to stoop down and eat that low level food. Even if they have to be a little hungry until they get to, the higher grade A food, they'll do that instead of eating that low grade stuff. So, when you view yourself at a certain level and you vibrating from a certain frequency, you're going to do things like a nobleman, or like a royal figure. You know how you think of, let's say, a king or a queen or an emperor and the empress. And how you have the royal court of the emperor. So not only do you have the emperor in there, but you have all the advisors, all the consultants. You know what I'm saying? You have all the different people of the government that are in there, that work with the emperor, basically. And these people, they see themselves a certain way. Like they don't, it's not like you think you better than other people, but you see yourself in more of in the highest form possible, ultimately. So-called black people, we once did see ourselves that way, but we haven't been thinking like that for a few hundred years. And, when you think this way, you're just not going to have much. You ain't going to put no value into yourself. You're not going to put no value into the things you do. And you won't put a value in your own image. Let's say, for example, with so-called black people who, just maybe abandon their children. And whether that abandonment could be physically, or you may be in your child's life, but you're not really interacting with them. If you got a daughter or something, you don't never really go in your daughter's room and just kick it with her. You know what I'm saying? Just ask her questions like, ask her what her and her friends been hanging out and talking about. Ask her what's the most popular thing, she's seen on TV that she liked lately. If you got a son, you see your son in his room, ask him what's the latest shit that's been cool. Ask him what's going on in the streets. Or what's going on out on the playground. So in other words, like, just being involved with them. Because when you do that, it just shows you respect your own image. And it shows that you got a deep interest. So, the first part of this tape is that, in order to be a true generational pyramid builder or a true generational mound builder, you have to have a noble mentality. And you have to see yourself in the highest esteem. And you have to cherish and value your own image. It's something that's very, very important, because if not, you just won't even take yourself serious. And the way you see yourself is the way everybody else will see you. The reason why the so-called black man is having so many problems with getting respect is because he's not following the command of how things go. So, for example, you had Eve who was following Adam, but Adam was supposed to be following the higher spirit. So that's how everything went. Eve humbled herself to Adam, and Adam humbled himself to the higher spirit. So what's going to happen is when woman starts going astray, in some form or fashion, I guarantee you, somewhere man is disrespecting the higher spirit. He's not really trying to figure out what he needs to do and stay in tune with it, or somehow, some way he's starting to fall astray from what his objective is. Maybe he could be disrespecting his own image, but the point is typically a lot of these women, when they start going astray and when they get in that extreme chaotic form, when they just completely, are in that destructive mode, a lot of that is because they don't know what their assignment is. Women also could be like a soldier after a war is over. The soldier, they train for war, and that's all they know how to do. So if there's no war going on, it could be like the movie Rambo. They just kind of be roaming around and they don't really know what to do. So they get themselves in a lot of bullshit. And that's how it is with a woman. See, especially with these so-called black women. But, women, they're really meant to be led by men. They meant to be guided by alpha masculine energy, experienced alpha masculine energy. That's what they naturally are meant to be instructed by. And when they don't have that, they in that chaotic state, just like the soldier who don't have a war. And that's what you have. So just to kind of piggyback, more on just being a royal person, a royal man, or a royal woman, and seeing yourself that way, not doing certain things. So, for example, as a man, part of being royal is like you can't be sticking your dick in everybody. Some of these women out here they not worth really that sexual connection with like that. My recommendation to that would be just to hold out until somebody come along that you probably do fuck with on a little higher level. You know what I'm saying? That's a little more appealing to you. But don't do it just because you want to get the nut off. Like that ain't really a royal way of thinking. You know what I'm saying? An emperor is not doing that. An emperor ain't fucking everybody just because they busting it open. Like for example, I just saw on YouTube recently, one of these Negro actresses was out here throwing herself at Leonardo DiCaprio. I think this woman named Tiffany Haddish, throwing herself at Leonardo DiCaprio, and then him basically just nah, Negro bed snitch on straight. He threw the reject button up at her. You know what I'm saying? He was like, nah, I'm good on that. So it's a twofold thing. Like this guy obviously sees himself a certain way. So these lowly parasitic, thirsty type people that show up, just because somebody throwing themselves at you don't mean you're gonna take it. So that's very, very important. Being a nobleman and being an emperor, like whoever you reproduce your seed with, this has to be a woman that basically you view it in the same light that you view yourself. So you shouldn't be reproducing yourself with no woman that you don't have that same royal esteem and respect for. Like if you don't view her as an empress, just like you view yourself as an emperor, then I wouldn't be sticking my rod up in her. And that's even if you're not trying to have a child or if you're not having a relationship. This could be a woman you just y'all just kicking it or whatever, and it just go down. Like she still needs to be on the empress level. So just because you're dealing with a woman, like she don't have to be it's not everybody ain't meant to be your wife now. Get that out your head now. Some women you're just gonna meet and it's gonna just be certain relationships and stuff. But the point is that every woman you deal with has to be vibrating from the empress level. That's another thing for you brothers out there. You got to do this. So the real core of what I want to talk about in this tape is I know a lot of you so-called black people out there, especially the younger generations of people. Probably everybody that's in their mid-30s and younger. I'd probably say they 40s and below, because 40 is pretty young. 50 and 60 is kind of young too, believe it or not. But we're going to stick with about 40. So, everybody, all the brothers and sisters that's about 40 and below. And sometimes we see and feel like that the prior generations dropped the ball a little bit and feel like they didn't do their part at building the pyramid. So let's go into the pyramid, because that's essentially what we're dealing with. Of course, you see that in the thumbnail. A lot of us see these pyramids around the world, no matter where they are on a continent. And although they look very, very mystical and mythical, very, very mysterious, and they raise a lot of questions, but nevertheless, they are physical things. You can go on Google right now and pull up images and actually see them. There are a lot of people who have visited these, tourist locations or, different continents and taken pictures with these pyramids. Matter of fact, some of you all listening to this tape may have actually been to Mexico or been to somewhere in Egypt and actually touched some of these pyramids. So nevertheless, they are physically real. They're very, very enigmatic, but they also are physically real. They're very large, and it looks like it took a very long time to make. So let's go into the dynastic bloodline of a royal nobleman and how when you have a large task that is going to take a lot of work, usually it's going to be generational. So that means that the entire bloodline has to be on point and has to be, on par with getting this task done. Let's take example, a lot of us may be familiar with certain geopolitics, but let's take a known family known as the Rothschilds. Now, a lot of us hear about the Rothschilds by them being an investment banking family. And what they have done, throughout the last few hundred years is that they have used their, finances that they probably have gotten from illicit gains. And they have used their money to get different countries and kingdoms in wars and ultimately get them in financial debt to them, to where they have to pay them interest into, infinity ultimately. So these Rothschilds had a plan. Let's say the first father Rothschild, he had a plan on setting up multiple central banks throughout Europe. And he wanted these banks to ultimately have all the, different kingdoms or countries of Europe indebted to these central banks. Ultimately, so his family would have control over the politics and over the economics of Europe itself. Now, when this man planned this, none of this was done. Okay, none of this was done. So when he planned this, he planned it. He had offspring. He raised his offspring up according to the plan, and he groomed them so they could now help succeed in this plan. And what he did after that is he had 5 sons, and he sent them around Europe, and they all set up central banks with some of the family funds. And then now the party starts. Then the goal after that becomes, now we want to expand our network onto other continents ultimately, and colonize the raw materials of other continents and colonize the indigenous people of those continents. And that was the next phase of it. And through the usage of the British Empire, etc., this is what they went into. So everything that I just explained took hundreds of years to do, but they planned it, and then it just stayed in the family, and everybody took the plan serious, and everybody played their part. So it was almost like each generation knew that the whole plan wasn't going to be complete in their lifetime. So you may have had a Rothschild be born, and he knew that, yeah, he may be alive, let's say 80 to 100 years, but throughout his lifetime, he won't see the fulfillment of what the Rothschild family has planned, and he's okay with that. So he's going to use his lifetime to play his little part, and then he's going to die and pass that on to his son and his daughter, and they're going to continue the legacy until it's fully completed. Now, when we flip that dealing with Aboriginal Americans, this is something we have not been doing. And this is something that our ancestors practiced and used in the ancient times when they built the pyramids. Because these pyramids were not built in just a few years, all right? A lot of these pyramids probably took, let's say at least a few hundred years, okay? At least a few hundred years, all right? I know it didn't take nothing like no 40 or 50 years. It probably took a few hundred years to do some of it. Even with the advanced technology that they had which was much greater than what we got today, might I add. And it still took them a while to do. So the point is that, you had to keep the next generation, working so the pyramid would fully get created. So let's take a step pyramid. So let's take the first bottom layer of the step pyramid. So you have family 1. During the lifetime of family 1, all they do is work on the bottom of the step pyramid. Then that generation, has children. The next generation come in. They work on the next part of the pyramid. And then it continues until they get to the final top of the capstone. And then the generation that is around at that time, they put the final capstone on top of the pyramid. And now they have a full completed pyramid. Now, so-called black people need to think very, very critically of that, because that is very, very important when it comes to us resurrecting what we want here in America, and also by not getting overwhelmed by what the task is at hand. Because when you see a pyramid, you see a full completed pyramid. And sometimes the way we think, we tend to try to overwhelm ourselves and try to put too much on our plate at one time. Especially with this problem that so-called black people have. You see the family situations are a certain way. The economic situations are a certain way. So when you look at it, it makes you feel like we really are behind. You see these other races and ethnicities of people. It seems like they more together. It seems like they got money and stuff. And it seems like they've been doing it for a while. So when we look at all that, we basically looking at this, picture of a completed pyramid that a lot of us feel like we only going to build in a few years. And that's the wrong mentality to have. You got to have more of the Rothschild-like mentality. And also remember too that even the original Rothschilds were indigenous people. Okay, so whether you want to say it's the Rothschild mentality, because you know which they got it from us, or you want to say it's the ancient Lemurian mentality, the ancient Atlantean mentality, whatever you want to phrase it as. But the point is this is how indigenous people used to do things. And even some of us still practice these codes to this day. Because let me also put this out there. This bullshit that black people got going on. See, all so-called black people not caught up in that. You know, like, and see, I can't really speak for most black people. Only thing I can speak for is myself. You know, I know what I grew up in. And I didn't have a lot of that dysfunction in my household. I didn't have a lot of that dysfunction in my personal environment. You know, I didn't grow up in a lot of that. Primarily because the one who raised me, she wasn't up on that. Okay. So, you know, a lot of this stuff get introduced based on who the parents are. And if you have parents who are not already working on the pyramid and don't understand that concept already, then, you know, their children are more than likely not going they're not going to really understand it either. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like with me, like my mother was very, very deeply in the trenches when it came to education. And just basically having a scholarly like mentality and being a nobleman and thinking with a wealth like mentality. She was always like that, and always wanted to just improve herself. She was always looking to see how she could upgrade herself, not physically, but more on her skills and more on a mental state. And I noticed this about her, and I copied this from her as a kid. You know, I always saw her just trying to figure a new level of something out. And it was also just certain things I didn't see my mother do. You know, I've seen my mother with two men my entire life. You know, I saw my mother with my own father. And then after my mom and my father separated years later, you know, my mother, you know, met a new person. And, you know, she got married and I had a young sister out of that. You know what I'm saying? And these are the only two men I've ever seen my mother with. So my mother didn't just, you know, wasn't out here just dealing with a bunch of men and stuff like that. Once again, having a noble mentality. So part of the effect of that is now me as young Mirage, you know, now I'm a certain way. Like now I don't just be sticking my dick in any old holes out here. Now I'm real funny about, you know, who I give my energy to because I see myself in a real high value. You know, some people may call it bougie. When I was young, a lot of girls used to call me cocky and arrogant and stuff like that. But what was very, very interesting is they still found themselves giving me their numbers and, you know what I'm saying, and all other kind of stuff. So, you know, your children, you know, they more than likely gonna pick up the royal mentality from their parents. At least that's where I got it from. You know, and if their parents don't have it, then more than likely they'll get it from somebody else that they have respect for. You know, like some brothers out here that may have not had certain people around that were on the royal like mentality. You know, or maybe they copy some type of ways that they saw Jay-Z move. You know, like let's take Jay-Z for example. He seems to have a royal and a noble type of mentality, and it seems like it's certain things that he just won't do. Like when it comes to the music industry, he won't let himself be seen with certain kind of people. You know, you won't see him rapping on certain folks' songs. You ain't gonna see him going to certain folks' clubs. You know what I'm saying? Like certain niggas be trying to reach out and get his attention. Like he's not gonna respond. So basically, he sees himself as being a very, very, very valuable person. And this is what I mean by seeing yourself as a nobleman and thinking on a royal-like level. Okay? And more than likely, he's going to pass this on to his children. And I'm pretty sure Beyonce, his wife, thinks the same way. Right? And that's why they magnetized each other, because they have a royal-like mentality. Once again, you're not going to see Beyonce hanging with certain people. You know, like for example, you know, when Beyonce and Jay-Z were hanging out with Kanye West, for example, you know, you're not going to see Beyonce hanging out with Kim Kardashian. You're not going to see that. You're not going to see them, you know, at Starbucks together. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to see that because Beyonce has that royal mentality. So she ain't going to want to be seen with a certain type of frequency that she perceives to be beneath her level. So when you think that way, you know, life going to treat you a certain way. So that's an example of the royal noble mentality. And that's also part of the pyramid building, you know, generational dynastic task, you know. When you are a royal person, you know that things won't, you know, just happen overnight. You know, you got to put in work, and you know that it's going to take a long time to see the full results that you want. People that have a peasant-like mentality, they think things happen overnight. They think that they can just pray to God or just have faith, and then something just going to happen like that. But when you have a royal-like mentality as the emperor or the empress in an empire state of mind, you know that things take time. You know that things take consistency. You know that you have to follow the laws of nature and how things naturally work in the universe and the supernatural universe. And you just have to stay the course. You know, ain't no mysticism behind it. The instructions are laid out. So a royal person is one who does their homework. So they know what they're getting themselves involved with. Let's take the pyramids. You know, how you lining up pyramids with certain star constellations, how you getting the pyramid shapes and getting all the geometry and all that stuff right to where the pyramid is not slumped over, the pyramid is not slick falling. You know what I'm saying? Like, the pyramids are solid. They got a solid foundation that takes a long time to get together. So look at it like this. In order for them to build the pyramid, not only did the pyramid itself take multiples of years, but even just the time to map the stars with the astronomy that the ancestors had going on. You know, mapping the stars, that took tens of thousands of years to do. You know, it took at least, you know, about 52,000 years because of full, you know, revolution through all the houses. We could say somewhere between 24, 25, 26,000 years. So, you know, when you go through that first revolution, that's when you first recorded. But in order to validate what you have recorded, and in order to make sense of what you have recorded and to feel secure and confident, you got to go through that revolution another 26,000 years to make sure what you recorded the first time shows up again and it matches. So now you'll know what you have in your records is validated, you know. So that's how they know that during the winter solstice, that around the times of December 21st, December 22nd, December 23rd, December 24th, December 25th, that you're going to have this period of the sun standing still. Then you have this, you know, whole period of the sun basically rising out of Capricorn or rising out of the lower half of the skies, basically. You know what I'm saying? So it's consistency. Like, the only way that we knew it was 4 seasons is if we went through the cycle one time, and then on the second cycle, we matched what we recorded on the first time with the second time. So once it happens the second time, then we can fully say, okay, this is what it is. So in order for us to, you know, align all these pyramids that are on the continents of Asia, you know, the continents of so-called Europe and Africa or Asia Minor, you know, the continents of Antarctica or the continents of the Americas, in order for them to do that, they had to spend a lot of time mapping the stars and already having an understanding of that. Then after you have the understanding of that, you have to put in the masonry work, you know, put in the work of the masonry, you know, get all the technology and everything ready to start putting in the physical labor, you know, and then you go out there and then you put in the work. But the point is that whoever was building these pyramids, they didn't overwhelm themselves to think that family had to build the pyramids in their one lifetime. That's not how they thought. They knew that they was going to work on the pyramid, have offspring, teach and raise their offspring in the way that they do things. And then, you know, when it's time for them to transition on, they pass it to the offspring, and the offspring, they take on the task. But usually what tends to happen is that the offspring doesn't follow in the way of their forefather, their foremother. And they choose to, you know, use their time to do other things. So the task is put on pause, and it doesn't continue. And that's what happened to us basically immediately after segregation ended. So when they created that Great Society program, You know, the whole Vietnam War, the heroin, the pimp era, the whole, you know, black exploitation, the whole integration era, the welfare, you know what I'm saying? The Cadillacs, the perms. When they brought that shit in right there, that generation right there, whoever grew up in that shit, a lot of you niggas, a lot of you niggettes, stop building the pyramid. Because the forefathers and the foremothers in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, they were still doing it. They were still building pyramids. They was working on pyramids, okay? They was putting in work. So I'm not talking about all the ancestors that was doing their thing in the 1930s, the 1940s, the 1950s, the early 1960s. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the ones that came in the late 1960s, the early 1970s, the mid 1970s, the late 1970s, the early 1980s, the mid like 1980s, the late 80s, and then the early 90s, mid 90s. I'm talking about all them right there that either were a little child, a teenager in their early 20s or in their mid 20s or their early 30s, in any of those years that I just named. It was them people. They the ones that dropped it. You know, this is all historically proven, y'all. Because like I said, them brothers and sisters in the 1930s, the 1940s, and the 1950s that was in segregation, they were not on the fuckery. They had all their shit popping. The men and women were living together. You know what I'm saying? When you see pictures of the so-called black men, they all had on dress pants, you know, nice shirts, even if they was just chilling on the block. You know what I'm saying? This is how niggas was dressing. You know, everybody was respectful, fucking with each other. The men and the women were interacting a whole lot more natural. You know, people was married more. The relationships probably were of a better quality. And once again, I'm not saying that everything was perfect. It still had their issues and stuff. But, you know, they were a little more on their pyramid building royal mentality. So the ancestors in the 1930s, the 1940s, and 1950s, they had more of a royal-like mentality. Because once again, a lot of Blackbeard's ancestors, they are much older. You know, my parents were older when they had me. And my father is, you know, he's 9 years older than my mother already. And then all my ancestors before that, they was already much older. So, you know, I come from that code. I come from more the code of like the 1910s, 20s, 30s, and 40s. You know what I'm saying? That's more the energy I was raised off of. You know, like late 1800s. Like that's like my ancestors' energy right there. I don't have my mother and all them. By the time, once again, the crack era, and it's like my folks wasn't dealing with that shit. They wasn't dealing with that shit at all. You know, by the time that shit really, really, really hit like that, my folks was not in the clubs doing a lot of that stuff. You know, but I mean, they still was somewhat younger. At least my mother was, because she was, you know, because she's younger than my father. But even her, she wasn't doing that shit. She was pyramid building. She was trying to figure out, you know, what she gonna do with her future. She was too busy trying to get, you know, her masters and shit like that. While other niggas is sniffing cocaine and got fucking coke spoons around their neck, she was goddamn getting her masters, you know. So that's why Blackbeard is a certain way now. Had she had a fucking coke spoon around her neck and just in the club all night and shit like that, I wouldn't be the way I am, because it would have reflected off on me. You know, so once again, I ain't saying that when my mom ain't party and have fun and do her thing when she was in her early years. Of course she did. She told me the stories and stuff she did. But when it was time to pyramid build, that's when she went and did that. You see? So ain't nothing wrong with having fun. Like, you know, life is about enjoying yourself. Like, Blackbeard is a big advocate of that. Like, when y'all start seeing me, once I start really doing my thing and start recording a whole lot more and showing y'all more into the personal life of Blackbeard and how my life is on an everyday basis, like, y'all gonna be laughing y'all ass off, because how I really am in just the regular world, it's like I'm a real, like, funny ass person, you know. So it's like, man, I be wilding out, man, like, for real. So shit, I be having fun. Like, I ain't no uptight ass person. Like, I may sound a certain way and my voice may be deep and all that, but I be having fun, man. No matter in any way possible. Like, I don't be uptight about shit. Especially once these businesses take off that I got working on and all this shit coming together like it's supposed to, man. These next few months, shit. But But yeah, man. So to wrap this thing up, man, you know, just had a mindset of a royal person. See yourself as being one of the people in the royal court. You know, see yourself as being noble. You know, it's like certain women, like even me, like when I'm out talking to women and stuff, you know, of course, you know, you always hollering and talking to the ladies, but it be certain women you come across and they have more of like the Empress type of vibe. And she just carry herself a certain way, and she just different. And when you see her, like, you know, you're going to be way more, you know, you're going to be like real sharp and on point how you talk to her. You know, everything will be respectful. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to have everything sharp, no matter what type of nigga you is. When you come across a woman that's on that vibration, you will. And it's because it's the same with women. They know when they meet the emperor and he has that God vibration, they know that it's the same with them. They have a respect. They don't come with all that other shit. They're not going to be really joking with him, and they're going to be very, very on point and very, very sharp. Because that's how it is when you're around God. You can't be really playing when you're around God like that. Okay? So it's, you know, it's a boy Mirage, man, the assassin, you know, the autochthonous Illuminati. We out here, man. So y'all just keep on growing and glowing. Just keep this shit 100, man. You know, think royal. Think like an emperor or an empress. You gotta have a high class state of mind, a ruling class state of mind. You know, you gotta have a ruling class state of mind. So that's what it is. You gotta be a generational pyramid builder, having a ruling class state of mind. Y'all stay tuned for the next one. I'm out.